So I'm so grateful you're here. I'm grateful to be here. This place is one of my homes. The monkeys are their family for me. I have lots of family. My underwater family, my monkey family. It's a big extended family. And where did Lisa go to? Oh, thank you for the great introduction. That was so sweet. So what I want to do today, I want to cruise through this first part because Lisa asked that I do like an intro of myself that shows like sort of what spiritual path was to practicing veganism. You know, how does it relate to spirituality? And in every way it does. So I'm going to cruise through that part. And then we're going to get into the part where you are going to share with me, if you're comfortable doing it, what is your biggest challenge as someone who practices veganism. Now, I'm not assuming that everyone here does practice veganism or that you call yourself vegan. I'm not going to assume that. So if you aren't vegan, you don't call yourself vegan, you don't practice veganism, you're still in the right place. Just don't be offended or feel like you're not included or whatever. Just consider it stuff you get to hear. Insider stuff you get to hear. So first I'll just do the zip. We'll go through the intro part. Well, it's hard to separate out my spiritual path from my vegan path because I think that they are one and the same. And I'm not a planner. I didn't plan to be vegan. I didn't plan to eat fashion. Things come along in our lives, and we are either awake and present to notice them, or we're not, and they go right by. And I'm sure that most of the things that have come in my life have gone right by, and I haven't noticed. But a few things I noticed that changed my life forever. So the first one happened, well, when I was a kid, I was terrified of all animals. Every single animal. If I saw a dog, I'd be in the house for the rest of the day. I would not go back out. So my father, he's kind of a rough guy, but he did a few things right like this. He went to the shelter, he got a puppy, he brought that puppy home, and he spent every night with this puppy on your lap until you stop being afraid. You cannot have fear in the world. And I was terrified of this adorable little puppy from the shelter. I'd like press my back against the wall. Whoa! I didn't want to be by the puppy. And at some point, I remember it shifted. I looked in this puppy's eyes, and that puppy was as scared as I was. And I was like, oh my God. And boom, instant friends. And that puppy named Sandy became actually the only one in our house who I could relate to, who I felt loved by. That was like my family member. That was like my sibling. And Sandy and I were inseparable. But it grew, and now my father says he created a monster, which he did, but, you know, not a mean monster, a kindness monster. And I started rescuing every animal I saw. Our garage was full of animals, and my dad would be like, when can I park the car in the garage again? You know, I'd have all these rescued animals in there, work on them, release them. I was just a kid, but the local vet worked with me. I learned to stitch up animals in elementary school. And my dad would beg me, like, please, I want to put the car in the garage. And I'm like, can't happen. You know, I had cages. And so I was doing all this rescue. I would get phone calls, and people would say, we have a snapping turtle in our driveway. We want to back the car out. Can you please come and get the snapping turtle out? And I got the nickname in our town as the animal person, you know, from being terrified of them. So all this was going on, and there were groups of animals I was completely unaware of, who I was interacting with every day, and just so unaware of it, which is incredible considering I worked on a dairy farm as a kid. I was completely oblivious to what was going on with the male calves. I didn't let myself see that the calves were being separated from the moms. I don't know. You know how okay, raise your hand if you've ever been oblivious to something that was going on right in front of your eyes. Okay, so that's everybody, thank goodness. Okay, so it's not just me. I was totally oblivious. I would eat, my favorite meat to eat was called tongue.
Oh, yep.
Okay, at some point, my brother sees me eating it. He said, don't eat tongue. I said, why? I love tongue. And he said, "It's tongue, dummy. It's tongue." And I said, "No, Mom would never feed us tongue." And I went right into the kitchen and I said, "Mom, what's tongue?" She said, "It's tongue." And I just flipped. And that was kind of my first introduction to how blind I could really be. But I was a kid, so I was still eating everyone else, except the tongue of cows. Now when I was 15, I walked into a leather shop with a friend, and the woman behind, first I said to my friend, there were skins hanging in there, and I said, "Don't buy anything, it's dead animals." And the woman behind the counter said, "Do you eat meat?" And my 15-year-old brain, what does meat have to do with dead animals? That was where I went. And then it computed. It computed, and I turned to them and I said, "No, I don't eat meat." My friend had just seen me down a hot dog just before we went in there, and she was like, "What?" We went out of there. She said, "Why did you lie to that woman?" And I said, I didn't lie to her. I will never eat meat again. I had never heard of vegetarians. I never met a vegetarian. So I didn't call myself anything except this person who doesn't eat meat. And then 5 years later, when I was 20, I was renting from a dairy farmer, Minnesota. I was renting from a dairy farmer. I heard a sound I had never heard. I got on my bike. I went over to the farm. And that was the day they were separating the male calves and taking them to the veal facility nearby. Some of them had wet umbilical cords. The sound I had heard from my place was the mom screaming open mouth for their babies being loaded. And here I was probably on my own. I was eating a pound of cheese a day at that point, maybe more. And I saw this going on. And I said, "Melvin, what the hell is going on?" And he said, "It's the males. We don't have any use for the males. Danny, the artificial inseminator, da-da-da-da. So, we don't have any use for the males." And I went around and I saw the moms, and some were bleeding because they were pressed against the barbed wire trying to get to the babies, and they were cutting themselves. And I came out and I said, "Melvin, no more dairy for me." He said, "They'll get over it, and you'll get over it." And I said, "Melvin, I don't want to get over it. I don't want to ever forget this day, this moment, what I have viewed, because I want to turn my back again. I just don't." So these were moments when I could have, out of fear of the unknown, and we all know this, like living out of fear, where you don't act on what you know, where your values, your deepest core values, don't align with your choices, and you don't want to go there because people think you're kind of nuts. My family thought I was nuts. My brother called for an intervention so that I could be psychologically evaluated when I gave up dairy and eggs. And eventually I met other people. And the first person who called themselves vegetarian, I said, "What is that exactly?" And she said what it was. I said, "That's me." I was so excited I had a name for myself. And then same thing with vegan. It took a long time before I met someone who was vegan. And I just had to take a lot of leaps of faith and trust. My path was about keeping my heart open. And that was and is my spiritual path. I'm not at the end of my path. I keep learning new information and growing and changing and finding out about my blind spots that I still have. So it has been quite a journey, and I had these 2 lucrative jobs once. Some of you know about this, where you give up those lucrative jobs and you go to what your heart's calling you to do. So I had to redefine wealth. Is wealth what's in the bank, or is wealth having an extremely rich life that completely lines up with my core values? And, I had stepkids at the time when I had the lucrative jobs. I worked for NPR as a producer and at Science Museum of Minnesota as an exhibit developer and writer. And the kids said to me one day at dinner, "You're happiest when you're doing that other work that you don't get paid for." Because I was going into schools and doing humane education. So I said, "Really? I'm happier then?" They said, "You're so much happier then. You don't want to go to those other jobs." I said, "But those pay everything, like our home, our food. Doesn't matter. Do it. Go for the other one." So I did. I quit the 2 jobs. And I did this. Universe, you want me to do this work. You make sure I have a roof over my head, organic food in the fridge, super healthy body, and I am there. And it's been now 40 years. And it keeps just in magical ways that I could not imagine from this vantage point to what's around the corner. It keeps showing up. I keep being encouraged, and I know, Carrie, you know this. You know, there's probably times when you thought, what the hell am I doing? You know, and it just shows up magically. Sometimes at the last moment, because I guess you're supposed to go through a little, and then okay, here it is. But that for me has meant everything. You know, I never planned this career. I never planned the path. It chose me. It chose me by going straight into my heart and saying, line up your values and your choices. And as soon as I lined them up thoroughly, boom, 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 boom. It all just came right in front of me. So, that was much longer than... Let's get to your stuff. So, I asked you earlier to think about what are your challenges on this vegan path. If you are not vegan, just what are the challenges to being true to who you are right now? I know that there are some of you out there who are like, I don't want to hear from non-vegans or whatever. This is a vegan spirituality retreat. What I want you to understand is that we all have our paths. Every single person under this tent right now is trying to do the least harm. That's what veganism is. You're trying to do the least harm. But in trying to do the least harm, none of us has it down perfectly. I have never met the person who is, I think they would just look like a beam of light. Like this person who's doing no harm. I've never met them in all these years. So it's a really important thing to remember, is that we are all, with what we know, with the tools we have now, doing our best. And sometimes you can look at people and say, that person doesn't look like they're doing their best. Guaranteed, they're doing the best with what they know. So I want to hear from anyone. You don't have to be vegan. And it could be that you have a challenge with vegans. That would be cool. If you were brave enough to share it. So who wants to give me your first situation? And the way this is going to work is you're going to tell me, what is this situation? It can be family, which is usually the number one. Family, co-workers, the world, witnessing cruelty in the world, witnessing cruelty in your own backyard. Whatever it is, what is it that you think, this is so challenging? Anybody want to be the first to share yours?
When I'm at home, I do all my own cooking. I buy all my own food. I can make everything vegan. But when I'm out at an event where there's vegetarian food, sometimes I'll be like, well, it's okay just this one time. And then I feel guilty, and so it's like I don't even have the pride, or I feel like I can't even call myself a vegan, so I have to call myself like a practical vegan or vegetarian, but I don't feel like that's me, because when I'm at home and when I'm in control, I never have the urge to eat any animal products. But when I'm in public situations where it's like it's already paid for, it's easy.
I love that you shared this. It kind of takes guts to share it around a bunch of 50% vegans. Okay, so first I want to ask, how many of you have ever experienced this where you either said, it's there already, or I'm not going to ask what the ingredients are, that looks so good. Raise your hand if you have ever done that. Okay, so that's the first thing I wanted you to see. You are not alone in this. And this is a process, you know, and this is about how you feel about you, you know, and lining up your deepest core values with your choices. And nobody is perfect at it. I drive a car. That car has tires with animal products in there. There is no 100% vegan. You do your best with it. You know, I flew here. You know, holy crap, to the environment, to the animals who count on that environment, flying's not cool. You know, and so none of us have this down 100%. So really what I'd say in this situation is, don't be hard on yourself. You know, what you're doing already at home and in the other parts of your life is more than 99.9% of the humans on the planet are doing. And there will come a time when you are exposed to so much of what's involved in the egg industry, in the dairy. How long have you been vegan? 2 years. 2 years. Okay, so there's going to come a time where the appeal of that, whatever that thing is at work or at the meetings or whatever, where the appeal of that is much less than your absolute love of all species and that awareness of what they're going through. But if you try and push it, if you say, no, 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 I'm not going to touch that, I imagine later you would it's like a reaction to it. Like then you're doing something that feels like denial instead of doing something that feels like I am doing this out of love. I am eating this carrot instead of that cupcake or that cheese, this or that, out of love. And I think that it's like, in my work, I used to be a fighter. I used to be like, rah, we will have a compassionate world, rah, and I used to be like that. And it didn't work well for me or for the people who I was talking with or for the way I felt inside. And so what I did instead was I decided I wanted to be an invitation. I wanted to invite instead of fight. And that is my attitude in absolutely every interaction. I don't care if it's with somebody abusing an animal in the Middle East, if it's with a bow hunter, I don't care who it is. My job right then is to love that person right where they are and to invite them to a loving possibility. And it's not always easy to do this, but I'm asking you to do the same with yourself. Don't fight you. Don't fight you at all. Be where you're at. Care about you. Read all you can about the realities of these industries, and it'll tip. Absolutely. And you may have moments where, you're going to call it where you weaken or whatever, or where you falter. It's okay. It's okay. Your intention is amazing, and don't be hard on yourself. And let me know if you find that person who's 100% vegan, because I have not met them. So thank you for sharing that. And if other people have anything that they want to share with the people after, I'm going to give some tools. I want you to leave here with very, very simple tools, like tools that you can use in your everyday interactions, that you will have this in your mind so strong, and it's going to be so simple that it's going to change all your difficult interactions. So this one relates to you too, actually, because one thing that I want you to have in your head, and we're going to talk about this with a lot of situations, is rather than trying to be understood, I want you to understand me. I want you to understand me. I want you to understand in 5 minutes what took me 61 years to get to. Could you just get it? So instead of this, I want you to understand me. What I do is I go out into the world with the attitude, I want to understand you. I want to understand your choices, how they feel inside you, how you made those choices. If you go out with this attitude, it is going to change every interaction you have with someone who you think of as other, because they're not other. But your job is to try and understand them. So we'll look at examples of that as people bring up their situations, because there's a lot of examples. I mean, it's magical to do this instead of like, will you understand me? Oh, I want to understand you. So I'll give you one little example, and then we'll go on to the next challenge. How many of you have ever experienced someone who, in this joking way, sort of makes a joke to you as a vegan that breaks your heart and that makes you feel so sad, but you're not allowed to say anything because they did it in this joking way, but it's about animals or whatever. So raise your hand if you ever experience this. People who tease or joke. So that's pretty much everyone. Almost everyone. Okay. When someone does that, this is another very simple tool. And it's like, I have seen amazing things happen when I do this. I have a lot of people in my life who love to do that, of course. Not so much anymore because it makes them nervous, but there are a lot of people who love to do that in my life. And what I just say back is, what would make you want to say that to me? What would make you want to say something to me that you know hurts? And I have seen the biggest, toughest, strongest, teasing people, sometimes bullies, just melt. Oh, I didn't think about it hurting you. It hurts you? And I'll say, yeah. This is my work. This is my life. Yeah, it hurts. I know what's going on that you're joking about. Oh, I'm so sorry. Like, I have never had anyone go, well, Just don't be so sensitive. Nobody does it. When I just ask them, oh, what would make you want to say that to me? So it's kind of turning it around. It's a way of trying to understand. So, okay, let's go on to the next, somebody's challenge. Anybody? Carrie?
Yeah, my mom will not respect my choices, and when I go over to eat at her house, she insists on making a meat-centered meal, and when I cook and I make a meal myself, she belittles it and makes it sound like I'm serving something really foreign or something. She does. Oh, the seasoning isn't right or something like that. She really belittles it.
So could you hear her in the back about her mom belittling her choices? Her mom not only makes like meat-centered meals when she comes over, but her mom also belittles vegan meals when she brings them over. So she just feels very disrespected. Is that it in a nutshell? Okay. So what I want to know from you, come on up, because then what I want to know from you, Carrie, is when she does that, when she belittles you, when you feel not respected by her, what do you say or do to her?
I don't give an immediate reaction because it's something that is just pervasive. It just goes on. Every time I go over there, I expect her to have a meat-centered dinner, and so I just don't react, and I'll pick around and I'll eat the salad and stuff like that.
Okay, could you hear her in the back? What she does, she eats the salad, picks around at the other stuff. Have you ever tried in that moment to ask her about it? Have you ever just asked her, Mom, how come you do this?
She just says, I like meat. I've tried talking to her. For her birthday last summer, I found Jane Goodall's book on, what is it called, spiritual eating or something like that. And, it's such a beautiful book, and I just wanted to share it with her, and I know she hasn't even looked at it. And it's got great recipes in it, too, but Goodall's story is so gorgeous.
Okay.
She just says, I like meat.
Okay. Okay, good. I'm going to let you sit back down. So, like I said in the beginning, of all of these challenges we have, every place I am in the world, family is at the top of the list. There's a reason family is at the top of the list of who is the most challenging when we make these choices. We have expectations of our family that we don't have of any stranger. The way that we are affected, like, what do we expect? I expect my family to understand me and understand my core choices, and how could they, my own family? So our expectations are very, very high for our family. So one thing I would suggest is be with your mom, not with meals. Be with her in a non-meal way where there isn't that tension. If she asks you why, you can say, it breaks my heart. If she asks you, she may never ask you why you're not coming for meals anymore. We had this situation in our family. Our family is now majority vegan after all these years, which is amazing in my immediate family. It's so cool. But 2 Thanksgivings ago, my parents were like, we're going to have Thanksgiving at your brother's. And I said, oh, okay, what kind of meal are you going to have for Thanksgiving? We're going to have a turkey. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to pass, and I'm guessing pretty much everyone who's vegan in the family is probably going to pass on the meal. But I would love to see you. I'll do it another time. I'll see you some other time. And my father was he's a very reactionary fellow. And he said, what? You and this animal rights work. He said, you're choosing your animal rights work over your family. And I said, oh, I look at it differently. And he said, how do you look at it? And I said, I look at it that you're choosing your taste buds over your family. And he said, what do you mean? I said, most of your relatives are not going to be there because of your taste buds, because of some old, outdated tradition. So you're choosing taste buds over family. I'm just choosing my deepest core values over being with the whole family at a specific holiday. So it's a little different. I look at it that way. Oh, babe, I just don't understand you. And then he hangs up. But the next Thanksgiving, he's like, all right, we're just going to do this vegan because everybody seems to be vegan now. But I wasn't saying I don't love you. I wasn't saying any of that. I was just saying I want to be with you. And I'll come when it's not Thanksgiving because then I do all the cooking and you're totally happy with all the vegan food. People have this real attachment to, like, especially holidays. You probably experienced it. Everybody's experienced it. It's this holiday, we have to have pork. It's this holiday, we have to have turkey. Not so, but you can be with them at other times. We kind of get to recreate traditions or recreate relationships. So your relationship with your mother would probably have a whole lot less tension if you just did fun stuff with her, hung out with her, did other things, not food. And eventually it will be a discussion. You'll notice that you're not eating with her. It'll come up. And you can just tell her, I love being with you. I don't want to have to be with you and feel heartbreak at the same time. It shouldn't have to be, and it doesn't have to be. So I think she'll get it. I have a feeling. I'd like to meet her anyway, your mom. But okay, and this I want to share too. Like sometimes we think of our family as lost causes. Oh my God, this one will never do it. How many of you have family who you think lost cause? So everybody, they're probably going to surprise you. Like, I cannot believe how people have surprised me. I've learned now over the years there are no lost causes. There are just slow causes. Some people are just real slow at getting it. Like, I assumed my sister, who is 6 years older than me, would never, ever be vegan. She thought I was insane for being vegan. And most of my lifestyle choices, not even about veganism. And then she came to visit me in New Mexico. We were hiking in the mountains. I was wearing shorts. And she kept grabbing my leg, grabbing my thigh. Why don't you have cellulite? And I'm like, stop it, And she said, why don't you have cellulite? I said, I don't know why I don't have cellulite. And she said, I think it's how you eat. I said, I have no idea if it's how I eat or not. And she said, and you're not out of breath. It's how you eat. I'm going to do this. So she did it for cellulite. You just never know, like what somebody's, weird tipping thing is, what's going to get them. And now, that was her gateway drug, was cellulite. Now, she's all about the environment. She's an animal rights activist. She's a powerhouse in South Carolina. She and my niece are veganizing South Carolina, and I'm their cheerleader. I'm like, go, go. But this is somebody who thought I was nuts before. And I would have called her a lost cause. So there are none. There are no lost causes. What I think is, this relates to the lost cause thing. I try to speak to this part of anyone that I assume they have a ton of compassion in here. And that's who I speak to when I'm talking to them. I know that people rise to the level of what we expect of them. So I'll give you an example. Oh, there's so many. Well, this is a fun one. This is a very fun one. So, it's a Florida story. Perfect. Okay. So it actually happened in New Mexico. I was going into Lowe's with JC, my partner, and these two people were coming out, and they were wearing full-length fur coats. Real fur, not faux fur. The real thing. Animals. So this man and woman were coming out. They're wearing full-length fur coats. And JC and I were going in, and my first thought was what are they doing in Lowe's? It's like a hardware store. These don't look like hardware store people. And then I said to my partner, JC, hey, I'll meet you in there. I'm going to have a chat with these folks. He said, oh, no, I'll just stay out. And he leans against the truck because he wants to see what the hell I'm going to do with the people. And I follow him to their car. And I look at the car. It has Florida plates, and it was like the Save the Dolphins. I don't think it said Save the Dolphins, but it was like the dolphin plate. You pay a little extra, and it's conservation of dolphins. And there was a sports car, Florida, so I went around, and the windows were down, and I say to the guy, are you from Florida, or this is a rental, or what? No, this is our car. We drove from Florida. I said, I love that you have the dolphin plates, because that tells me you're both really caring people. And they both shook their heads, yes, yes. I said, because you're so sharing, I want to invite you to do something. And I think they were thinking like a party or something, or I don't know what they were thinking. But I said, I want to invite you to do something because I can tell You're really caring people. I said, the next time you're at a computer, what I want you to do is do a little research. Google the cruelty and the violence that went into your jackets, your fur coats. And the guy turns forward then toward the steering wheel. She keeps looking right at me. I said, I am only asking you to do this because I realize how caring you both are. And caring people like you would never want to support this. You wouldn't. I know you wouldn't. And she keeps looking right at me. And she said, I'm going to do that. I said, that makes me really happy. Thank you for being caring. And he's got the window going up. But in that moment, she looked straight at me. I don't know what they did when they got to the computer the next time. I don't know if she researched it. But at least it planted a seed for her of possibility. And that's what we get to do. We don't get to determine the outcome of what these people are going to do with their next choices. But we do get to plant these seeds of it is possible to look into this and to not support something that you don't believe in. Really that invitation. Oh, an invitation, please check this out. And she's like, she's going to do it. So, okay, on to the next challenge.
I wasn't going to say a challenge, but one thing that you said to me that I always think of is 5 minutes before I was vegan, I wasn't vegan. Kind of leaving that door open of like meeting somebody and offering non-judgment to them by thinking 5 minutes before you were vegan, you weren't. So,
For sure.
Like, just knowing that people might have the potential one day and not to judge them for not being it today.
So this is really powerful because we think we know other people just by observing them, hearing them. We have our stories all about who they are. And how many of you have ever had sort of a stereotype that pops up when you see someone or you talk to someone? Oh, I know what that person's about. And then you start chatting with them and your story totally changes. Oh, that's not who I thought they were. And we've all experienced this, how wrong our judgments can be of people. And so that's why I have the no lost causes, and that's why I like what Faith is saying. I always think, oh, yeah, they could be 5 minutes away from being an animal rights activist, or they could be 5 minutes away from being vegan, because you don't know. There was this experience I had. I go into a lot of schools, because I've done a lot of humane education over the years, and I went into this one school, and some of these kids were so violent, I couldn't believe the things they were saying. And this one kid kept saying violent stuff to see if he would get a reaction out of me, and really intense violent stuff. Yeah, you know what I do with our chickens at our place? I grab them, and I wring their necks, and I throw the heads. And he was just like saying all this violent stuff. And he was hard to deal with. Many, many years later, I went into a humane society with my stepdaughter, and we were going in to look for an animal at the shelter to adopt, and there was this nice guy in there, and I said hi, and then he said, don't you remember me? And I said, you look kind of familiar, but kind of not. And he said, you came to my school. And I said, I came to your school. I said, which school? When was this? And it had been like 10 years earlier. And he said, yeah, I was the kid who was talking about all the violent things, like wringing the necks of the chickens. And I'm like, I can't even believe I'm seeing this kid again in a shelter. And I said, do you work here? He said, I volunteer here. And my eyes just bugged out. He said, strange, huh? He said, I want to tell you, I know I was bad that day, but that day changed my life. I started thinking about animals in a different way. And I would have left there, I did leave there thinking, that boy is a lost cause. He is like a psychopath who's going to end up in jail. And that he really taught me, he was one of my best teachers because he taught me there are no lost causes. And when we were leaving the shelter, I asked about him. I knew the person who directed the shelter, and I saw her, and I said, what's the deal with him? She said, most reliable, best volunteer we have ever had. Shows up religiously and will do any job. I said, wow, wow, wow. And that was greatest teacher for me at that moment. So situation or challenge.
I have a world of patience with most people, and I try to come from a place of love as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Where I have trouble reconciling is abusers. We just hosted an Earthling screening last week, And the whole time, I'm like imagining taking these people and slaying them and torturing them.
Of course.
Like the vigilante comes out, and I just want to destroy. And that's when I really struggle, because I'm trying to be, an example of love. And, with people who are on the journey, or people who are resistant or who challenge, that's all good, and it's all part of the process, including the kid that's, making these cracks. But when they're actually callously doing these things, I don't want to indulge in fantasies of negativity. So that's really my challenge is, as an educator, having to see stuff all the time and being able to, not absorb all of that and fixate on it and let it fester, because all it does is just bring more negativity in the world. So what are good ways of letting go of that energy, like just releasing it and trying to find, like you were saying, that the love that exists within these people? I can't imagine it. I know it has to be there, but I just, that's my biggest struggle. I can handle any challenge when it's not actual direct abuse.
Great.
That
Perfect.
Plagued me.
I have a question for you. Do you act on everything you know?
What do you mean?
In your consumer choices, in your lifestyle, do you act on everything you know?
In terms of trying to be as vegan as possible?
Anything. Do you know about sweatshop labor?
Yeah, I definitely still buy clothes from sweatshops, because how can you avoid it?
You can avoid it. That's the point. This isn't to blame you.
Even fabrics, even dyes. You know what I mean? Even if you
I know what you mean.
Yeah. So you do the best you can, but doing the best you can versus willfully.
Okay, I know where I'm going with this. I got you. I got you.
Okay.
So I'm asking you this for a reason, because you are aware of something that is an injustice. And still, like everyone here, nobody is not supporting suffering. There's nobody. Everybody is supporting suffering on some level. And that is when we know about it, we often don't do it. I mean, I'm a total thrift store person, so I'm just buying crap from a thrift store all the time. But still, I have things I know about that I sometimes turn my back on. Damn, that product's so perfect for my hair not being frizzy. Shit, should I put the Cruelty Cutter app on there, or should I not? I have these moments where I'm like, wow, how perfect do I have to be? Now, that's when we know what's going on. So we are expecting somebody. I can guarantee you that these abusers are not aware of the violence that they're committing. Okay, so say somebody who works in a fur farm, and they're doing anal electrocution, which is common, so that they don't hurt the fur. I was showing a film at a conference once, and this person got up so angry when she saw this anal electrocution going on in the film. And she said, I want to do to that guy exactly what he does to those animals. And we all know this feeling. But the reality is, we often don't act on what we know, and that guy doing the anal electrocution or doing the abuse isn't even aware that they're doing something wrong. They're not even aware. So we are expecting something of them that we don't have it. If we're not aware of something, we're simply not aware of it. So I work in the Middle East a lot, and it's super challenging, because in the Middle East, where I work, in some of the most violent places, animals, children, and women are property, and the people can do what they want with them. And people have said to me, how have you been going there all these years and working with these horrible people who will burn dogs, who will the kids will take big pieces of concrete and bricks and toss them at horses in small pens. I witnessed the worst violence toward people, toward animals, toward the women. It's intense. And people said, how can you keep doing it? Because this is what you're talking about. How do we stay in this and stay loving? And I work with large numbers of teachers and principals. And I will have educated principals say to me, I own my wife, I own my children, I own my animals. You cannot tell me how to treat them. And I work with them for a week, and by the end of the week, they're thinking about it differently. But people still say, how can you keep working with them in this violent place? Here's how I can. I also work with the children. So I see the little boys who become these men. And I see these little boys. The little boys are given kudos by their uncles, by their dad, by their grandfathers, if they are violent toward their sisters and toward their mother. If during the week of sacrifice, they will slit the throats of as many goats as possible. The more they slit, the more their daddy loves them. These little boys turn into the adults who I work with. So I work with both. So, wow, I know what they felt as 5- and 6-year-old boys being told to slit throats. I understand this. And I get them and I love them because they are doing their best. They don't have a clue. So I've had to really shift it there. And what I work with them on is being strong enough to be their own person and stop trying to please their daddy. And that's what I have to work with them on. And every single person you're looking at who is doing this, I mean, I have worked with bow hunters and gun hunters and like everybody, the most violent people you can imagine. I worked in the New Orleans prison teaching compassion, if you can imagine. So these are people who are doing their best, So that's what I do. I picture them as kids, and I'm like, okay, what the heck happened to this kid? What happened here? And some of the most violent people who I have worked with experienced such horrible abuse as kids. Horrible. And the only way I've ever seen them turn it around is not to blame them, not to point a finger, is to find that place in me that can love them 100%. And it's not always easy. It isn't, and you know this. It's just tough. And sometimes, I mean, it probably sounds like I talk really sweet all the time. I don't talk really sweet all the time. Like, I don't, sometimes I just lose it, and I look back at when I lose it and I'm like, who was that person? Whoa, because like one day I'm like going down the street on my bicycle and I look up on this deck and I see a guy, there's a puppy tied on a short rope and the guy's beating the crap out of the puppy with a stick. I throw down my bike, I run up on the deck, I pay no attention to the size of the guy, which is dumb, but I didn't. I go up on the deck, I grab the stick, I throw it off the deck. I said, what the fuck are you doing? And here I teach compassionate living and, communication and, and at that moment, there was nothing else I could do. I was just like out of my mind. I couldn't believe this, watching this puppy. And he said, get the fuck off my deck. And I said, I will not. And I see a woman peeking out of a curtain and I'm like, I get immediately abused woman, abused puppy, probably her puppy. Like I get the whole thing. And I said, I am taking this dog. He said, you take the fucking dog. I said, and I'm watching you. Don't you dare ever get another dog. You will be sorry for the rest of your life. And I untie this dog, and then I'm walking down the road, and I'm like, oh, I've got a puppy now. But there was no thought. And you know this. Like, you've probably done the same. Your reactions come out, and you're like, wow. And so I'll tell you what, it feels a whole lot better to be able to love that person. Like, if I had approached that guy in a different way, I would have felt better about it afterwards instead of, like, I don't know how many times I used the F word at the guy, and he used it at me. But I know I would have felt better if I would have had a conversation with him rather than, like, I can be so Darth Vader sometimes, like, just nasty. And so the opposite of that is when I assume that I can sit with someone and connect. So I had a bow hunter come to my cabin that I used to have in Minnesota, and the guy came and bam, bam, bam on my door, and he said, you got all this land of yours posted. We've been hunting here for 4 generations. We're bow hunters. We're different. And I said, do you want some tea? Because we could sit and talk about why, if you want to know why I have the land posted. You want tea? And he's like, yeah, all right. And so I made tea. We sat on my front porch, and I said, I'm going to tell you a story, and I hope that helps you understand why I have this posted. And this is actually a sanctuary for wildlife. You are welcome to hike here all you want. You're welcome to swim in the river. You are not welcome to bring weapons. They are not allowed on this land. I got to know who they were. They were like family, only like the kind of family you really want to hang out with. You know, like they were just so great. And one year they came through and one of the large bucks had an arrow through and under the spine and was like labor breathing. And I watched him, and he couldn't get on his back to get apples, and I got some apples down for him, but there was nothing I could do for him. And I told this bow hunter this story on the porch. And I said, this is a sanctuary for them. So I know you think that bow hunters are totally different. I have a really different idea about that and experience of that. That is not my experience. It is not nonviolence to bow hunt. So I would prefer if you go hunt at all the rest of Minnesota where you seem to be able to hunt, and leave me my little acreage here, you know, and leave this to the animals. You have the rest of the state to do this. And this guy said, I understand. I totally understand. You know, I could have screamed at him and said, get off my land, never come back, da-da-da-da. But he said, I totally understand. He said, we will not hunt here, and I'm sorry you had that experience. And we hugged when he left. I hugged a bow hunter. I mean, holy cow, you know, like, so I wish I had done different with the puppy and the, you know, because maybe I could have helped the woman inside too then, you know, so.
Can I
but,
jump in on her conversation?
Absolutely. And do it.
I have no problem with that. So I used to work for PETA, and I did undercover investigations, and I worked in slaughterhouses and stuff like that, and I saw terrible stuff. The slaughterhouses where I worked, I'd ask myself over and over and over again, and then I was interviewed by the press, and they kept asking me the same question. Well, how could you work alongside these people? I worked along 12 guys, and in one case we were hanging chickens and letting them go to their death through electrocution and dragging their necks through water and then eventually slitting their necks. And I'm working along 12 guys for 9 months in one particular case. And I got to know the guys. I got to know about their families and their stories. And in this place where I worked, they would bus the workers in for 50 miles. They would bring them in to earn $10 an hour. But in that location, that was the best paying job around. And I'm like, I know these companies don't go out and post an ad, we're looking for animal abusers. These people are not animal abusers. They're cruel, they did terrible things, but somewhere in there, they're human. They were good people, but they were bad people. And so they all got hearts.
Thank you so much. Everyone here, we're good and bad. You know, I have a friend who has that painted on his car. A little good, a little bad, like most people. You know, it's who we are. Thank you for going into the belly of the beast like that. Like, that is tough, tough work. Yes. And speak loud.
I took a rough count. I think there's about 40 people here and 7 men. Oh. That's a pretty good turnout from my experience. Really, I find that really troubling and sad. There's hardly any men that get involved or care about any of these issues. And the other thing I want to say about hunting, if you really look at what hunters do, it's really easy to kill an animal. Just wait there. Most of the time they're not moving. Very, particularly in Africa. And they stay in blinds to kill a deer. They'll sit there for hours. The deer will come by. The deer doesn't know what's going on. They're still. They're not moving.
Right.
It's really easy. If you confront hunters and you're able to, like she said, have a decent conversation with them, you could bring this up to them and see how they could defend themselves. Really easy to kill an animal. A moose, a bear. A bear is eating cherries, you know, berries. Of
course.
It's not even moving. And they think they're macho.
You know, this is a really, like that's a really great moment when you can do the trying to understand them rather than them understanding you, because you can just ask a million questions. You know, like I was out backpacking with a bunch of women on this trip, and we came by this river, and there was a man and a woman were fly fishing. And so I stopped to talk to them, of course. And so I stopped, and I said, hey, can I ask you a few questions? And she said, sure. So I was asking the woman the questions, and I said, what is it that you get from doing this? And she said, oh, I just love it. And I said, I can see that. You know, you're taking your weekend out to do this. I see that. She said, but we do catch and release. And I said, you know, catch and release is pretty tough on the fish. You know, this is where all the nerve endings are. This is how they know stone, food, you know. Catch and release is tough, and most of them die of infection after they're released. So, but I'm wondering what you get from it. There's something you get from it. And I'm just curious, you know, like what is the joy? Like why not just come out and just hang out in the river? You know, what's this part? Is it the skill or what is it? And then she got almost teary-eyed. She said, my father's dead, and this is what I always did with my father. And you hear this from hunters, like, all the time. This is our tradition. This is what we grew up with. So it's about bonding and closeness and so many things for them. But every time I've started a conversation with a hunter, with somebody who's fishing, with anybody like that, when we get down to that emotional part, it's so strong for them. The bond with a parent, a tradition, a holiday tradition, it is so strong. And like with this woman, I asked her, you know, I told her I do a lot of research on animal intelligence and emotions, and that we're just starting to understand fish have relationships, emotions, language. They have all this going on. I said, would it make a difference to you if the fish could audibly let you know that they're in pain? Do you think it would make a difference to you? I wanted to understand her, like, where is she at? And she said, yeah, it would make a difference. I said, in what way? She said, I wouldn't do it anymore. I said, at some point, you're going to come across the information that there are now microphones that are picking up on the language. You just don't have the ears for it. So I hope you come across that information and that you can just come enjoy the river. And she said, oh, okay, thank you. You know, she was just out there in the wilderness with her, this guy trying to enjoy herself. But, you know, we get to just plant these seeds. You know, it's like there's so many great opportunities like that. That's the reality currently of the world that we live in. That we see other beings as a group rather than the individuals. You know, it's very hard. It's also, I mean, that's why this place is so important. You're balancing things out a bit. You're teaching people that these are individuals with needs and desires, and you know, they want the same kind of comforts that we want. And so you are teaching people that these are individuals rather than a group to write off. And every social change movement has had to deal with this. You know, it's very easy to write off a group because of their gender, because of their sexual orientation, because of their race, because of their religion. But if you get to know an individual in that group, it's a game changer. You can no longer write off the group because you have a close connection, a relationship with that individual. One of the best things you can do, a workshop called Despair Repair, which I do quite a bit of, because there's a lot of despair when you have your eyes open, when you choose to not turn away from violence. And there's so many things you can do in terms of despair repair. For me, I meditate an hour in the morning, an hour in the evening. It is the only way I've been able to do this for 40 years. I do yoga, I dance a boatload. I hike in the mountains, I bicycle, and self-care is crucial. Because as soon as you say, I can't take time for me, because there's so much suffering out in the world, you become a tired, angry, unhealthy representative of a community that nobody's going to want to join. You know, period. You know, you want to be an irresistible invitation to a community that is caring, that is healthy, that understands self-care, that isn't exhausted all the time, or stressed or angry all the time. It's a big job. You know, everybody like who's in this movement, you are a poster child for veganism in most places. You know, you're representing it. And it's, I used to think of it as a burden. And you probably sometimes think your knowledge is a burden, Carrie, like what you know is a burden. And I shifted that. I don't remember when it was, but it changed everything in me. I shifted it to, instead of a burden, to be this incredible honor that I am one of the people who was chosen to be a voice for these beings who in our society are not heard. And what an honor. You know, it's just so great. Instead of it being a burden now for me, I take the job pretty seriously and just consider it an honor instead of being resentful. Why do I have to know what I know? You know, because, I mean, it's like that, you know. It's like, wow, why did I have to ever learn this? And instead I'm like, wow, it all came in front of me. I did not turn away. And I'm just so honored that I was chosen by whatever force chooses each person in this tent to be who you are. Lucky you. Won't always feel like lucky you, but it's a really beautiful position on the planet. You know, on a planet where kindness and compassion is very threatening, to be that person who resents kindness and compassion, that's a great job. Like, that's just a great thing to be chosen for. And so, like, Carrie is doing something here that is her passion that balances it out. So the last thing I want to do is I want to encourage you to figure out what your passion is and be unstoppable. Be completely unstoppable. If you are an artist, you be an artist for these beings who need our voice. If you're a musician, be that. If you're a writer, spiritual leader, do that. Do what is your passion. And you are the one who knows what that is. So my partner and I realized that some people needed to be encouraged to take it beyond their own lives out into the world. That's the next step. It's great if you're making wonderful choices that align with your values. Then your next job, share it. Educate people. Be out there, be an activist, an educator, whatever works for you. So we wrote this book. This isn't shameless promotion because you can get it free on our website. You can download the free PDF, 99 cents on Kindle. Everyday outreach for people who care. It's for introverts, extroverts, people with no money, a lot of money, no time, a lot of time. This will give you ideas for how to take it beyond your own life. And that is very healing. When you take it beyond your own life and you actually see it spread, those ripples go out. You know, like Faith right here. She's like, she doesn't agree with me, but she's an amazing cook. And she is veganizing Santa Fe, New Mexico through her food. You know, she does these cooking demos that are just like, people can't resist them. You know, so whatever it is, you know, and everybody in here has something to bring to this. Make sure it has longevity. Don't do things that are going to just like destroy you to do them. Some people can do what you did, the undercover work. I've done the... Yeah, me too. I've done the undercover footage work, you know, and had to be treated for PTSD from it. You know, it's a tough thing. It's not for everyone, you know, but if it's something you can do, great. If not, everything is wonderful. Letters to the editor. Do it. Fabulous. It changes things. It changes things. Your voice being heard. Yes. Oh, wait. And you're next. Okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, I don't talk about this much in public because it's such a controversial thing. My background is academic, and in my opinion, the people in the United States who cause the most massive harm to nature are people with doctorates. They're not high school dropouts. You know, we're always talking about how we should have people stay in high school. Well, it's not high school dropouts who create weapons of mass destruction and come up with animal factory farming and all the hideous things that people with PhDs come up with. It has been, because I discussed it with other people with doctorates, and I have, over the years, as I discuss it, run into people with doctorates in physics who got out of the field, people with doctorates in vet medicine who just went nuts when they found out what all veterinarians do, and just people who are in biology, zoology, any of the life sciences.
Sure told us, because we're supposed to be here, right? And I look at compartmentalized ethics and people using logic as a means of survival and continue doing what they're doing, and that's what it is they make up a story and then they do everything they can to support that narrative, and they completely bury their soul and compartmentalize their ethics, and they do it in the name of academia.
Of course.
And that's the thing, is really you get to a point where if you are empathic, you're gonna reach an impasse where you either have to stop doing what you're doing or just shut down. And
for sure.
That's why some of them leave, and that's why some of them stay in,
Yeah.
It's impossible for me to wrap my head around it, but I know that, just having those conversations with people in those industries, they're just like, this has to be done. Someone's got to do it.
Right.
What's your name?
Dorothy Burnham.
Dorothy.
Burnha.
So here's what I got, Dorothy Burnham, from what you said. You are so passionate about this.
I am.
And now you are voicing that here. And I would encourage you to find that voice in the world, to share it in any way, whether it's letters to the editor. The letters to the editor is the second most read page in the newspaper.
Really?
You can reach millions. You can put a letter to the editor in that will go far and wide, the entire country. So I would encourage you, because you're articulate, you're knowledgeable, you're passionate about it. So this is exactly what I'm talking about with taking it out into the world.
Yeah.
You have a role. You had a role through your whole life. I'm watching your passion in this. This is your role now. And use it. Yeah, don't squander that one, because that is great.
I've been an activist since I was a kid. And I love activists. I love activists.
Foot in that world. You have a foot in this other, the world you're talking about, the empathetic world.
Yes.
You have a foot in both worlds. Wow, you're like a bridge that needs to be out there sharing that. So that's what I would share with you. So
I'm not doing it through. I'm 81, and I'm thinking, so why do you have to do anything?
You don't have to.
Why don't you just lie on the couch and wiggle your toes? It bores me to lie on the couch.
I love that, Dorothy. I love that.
I should do, and if for no other reason, I can.
Yes. So, unfortunately, we have to wrap up. But do you have something brief you wanted to say? If it's brief.
Carrie, but also everybody else. The USDA is very frustrated. What's going on out there with small circuses and roadside zoos? It's probably going to get worse because Trump has cut back. They probably have less people. But is there any way to bombard them? Maybe everybody could call about what's going on out there. I mean, they're not monitoring the elephants, the bears, the tigers, the roadside zoos, the monkeys, and all that.
You get to organize that.
Bother them, so maybe you could get them to move their ass.
Best, because whenever there's a monkey rodeo or there's a monkey on television or all of this stuff or labs, I call PETA, and they have this amazing way where they just spread it all out, and they've got activists everywhere that gather together and write letters or go and
yeah, fantastic.
Because I can't blast the labs. I can't do the labs. I'm like the go-to person for the labs to bring the money.
Bingo.
So, but my friends all know what's going on there, what my experience. So I can't do it, but I know people do it. And Peter's just one of my go-to people that go
For sure.
and they make a lot of things happen really fast. So that's.
Is there anyone that you know from the USDA, a name that you could?
Well, Gwen, who put on this whole program, she is actively trying to change it. She did it a couple of years ago for big cats. Someone did it for big cats. She's doing it for primates, trying to, and that's why they wanted me there. The whole theme of the whole symposium was about fresh air, sunshine, mother rearing, not separating families. And it was real. And I said, wow, this is the theme at the USDA symposium. So they are trying to say,
good.
That's why I was invited, and I'll, to let these people know that you can't, this isn't the way to come back. So
you're right. I call Peter about Rural King if anybody shops there. Does anybody know about Rural King? They have a chain of stores.
No.
The animals are treated. They die. They leave them in the cages. Peter wasn't aware of it. I got in touch with them, so they're starting to do something about that. But Rural King is horrible. Shop there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, everyone. I wish we had like a whole day to do this. It would be great. And when we're all done and we're done with the closing, I think I have 5 of these if you like a book. Otherwise, just go get the free PDF off the website. And it's $10. So it's Plant Peace Daily, Everyday Outreach for People Who Care. So it's on Amazon, Kindle. I think it's 99 cents on there, free on the website, Plant Peace Daily. So, but if you like a book,